coming here, I found it really challenging to actually have that life cycle, that routine of cooking good quality food and eating well. And I don't know if Yawer, Mahwish, you guys have had similar challenges.
Cambrian Explosion.
Uh, Hello, everybody. You've just joined us in the midst of an interesting conversation. Nabeel, I heard you have a new mom.
Yeah, I needed to get cooking, and I just got myself a new mom. You can do that these days on Amazon. It's only
Wow.
for 3.99, $4.99.
Uh, 3.99 or?
No, no, a little more expensive than that.
Oh,
And it's this is not a mother-in-law, by the way. This is
oh,
a real genuine mom, cooks
yeah,
like one too.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's called an air fryer.
Oh, okay. You're one of those people.
Yeah, I'm one
You're,
of
you're one
those
of the
people.
one of those people who was crazy about their air fryer.
I absolutely
Yeah,
am.
yeah.
Um, you know, here in Canada, getting good quality food is almost always a challenge. Um,
Mm, true.
Back home, where when there's the family connection, you have that net. There's also always cheap food available outside, which is good quality, which is not processed. Um, and so coming here, I found it really challenging to actually have that life cycle, that routine of cooking good quality food and eating well. And I don't know if Yawer, Mavish, you guys have had similar challenges.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I want to first welcome our listeners to our new experimental format of Cambrian Explosion. We're trying out something that we think you'll like. We're trying out a shorter form of episode and, quickly discuss things that interest us, that are relevant for us. So, yeah, we're your hosts, Mahwish, Nabeel, and myself, Yawer. And yeah, have fun listening and let us know what you think.
Yeah, so let's get to some of those delicious insights.
Yeah, so Nabeel, you asked about the air fryer. So, okay, I'll be honest. I think all three of us here have bought air fryers and we've used air fryers. And you know, I, um, I'll be a little bit honest. I feel like yeah, okay, I get it. I think it's probably because I'm nobody's idea of a master chef or anything like that. So to me, the air fryer works best when I'm making grilling or roasting meats like chicken and beef. But for vegetables, I felt like it kind of was underwhelming. I don't know, maybe I just don't know I stubbornly am refusing to learn how to cook vegetables properly, but for me, grilling, roasting meats, that seems to be the killer use case for air fryer.
I would agree. I think that to me, it's been that and baking. Baking is
Mm,
also super interesting in the air fryer. To me, the air fryer is not a fryer. That is a confusing term. It's basically a
mhm,
mini baking oven.
mhm, mhm.
And even when I'm grilling meats, I'm thinking about it as a baking oven rather than
Mm.
a fryer in itself. And
Actually,
so,
now that we're getting into that, what could you talk us through a little bit about what are the differences between an air fryer for folks who might not know? Why is an air fryer something special by itself?
so what you're essentially doing is that you've got a couple of ways or methodologies of cooking that you have available. One is you can cook on a stovetop,
Mm,
and when you're cooking on a stovetop, there's one, it's open from the top, there's heat coming from the bottom, um, and it is really conducive to heating something like oil and then have something frying inside that oil, or
mhm.
having some kind of liquids that you have available and they're heated from the bottom, and then the material is cooked inside it. Um, when you then move to something like a baking oven, It has heat elements both at the top and the bottom, but typically a lot of the top ones are used, and this is the difference between, grilling, broiling, and some of these other things that you will hear terminologies is about whether you're using the top or the bottom elements to heat.
Mhm.
And so when you are cooking with that kind of a format in an closed heated chamber, the food cooks in a different way than if it was getting heat from the bottom uh, through a liquid or through another medium. And so the way that the food cooks and it tastes is different. But typically in a large oven, you need to first heat up the oven. You need to get it to temperature, like 300. So you have to, and that's because it's got a big space in there. And large ovens are made to cook for a larger party. Uh, an air fryer is basically, to me, essentially, is like a mini oven. It's a small chamber, so it takes literally a minute to get to that cooking temperature, but it's essentially a filament at the top that's heating like an oven downwards
But the
in a small
question
chamber.
is, are you actually saving time with your cooking using it?
I feel I save time because I feel like I'm cooking fresh. I prep in I'm not cooking the prep at the beginning of the week. I prep once and it's in the freezer, in the fridge, and then when I need to cook it, I just throw it in there in the air fryer and set the timer and forget about it. It takes no time, like it'll take 20 minutes to cook, but I don't have to pay attention to it. It's relatively quiet in the kitchen. I can be working or doing something else, and after 20 minutes, it's done.
And what is the
Um,
air part referred to in the air fryer? What is being how is the air part coming in there?
so essentially, it's heated filaments and air is being thrown down from it, and what they're trying to really the term air fryer is basically an attempt to move away from oil frying, which is what you would do in a stovetop. And it's trying to point towards the fact that it's a healthier way of cooking because you're not cooking in additional oil. Typically, when you end up baking something, it cooks in its own oil. It's heated from all sides. Um, um, it's it will when it's done well, it will not lose oil to the outside because there's marinade or something on top that keeps the oil within the food that's being cooked, and its own oil. And so you end up with something that's juicy, that's tasty, that's delicious, and that's making me hungry now because I'm thinking about it. So
But what you're saying, the first thing that popped in my mind was, as an immigrant, if you told someone who's Pakistani or Indian to cook with little to no oil, they would say that's very blasphemous. Like you're not gonna get a good tasting dish out of that. Like when I first saw the air fryer coming in and using it, I had those doubts because it's like, it's not gonna taste like something I could just fry and create to eat.
yeah.
But a lot of dishes are suitable for that, aren't they? Like tandoori chicken and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
the thing.
So
So
I make that's one of the only things that I make in the air fryer because it just comes out like you would in a tandoor, and it's got the charcoal and the sear on it. And people have asked me, how did you get this like to look like this? But the problem is if so I, when I'm taking out chicken, and most people do this, if you have 5 or 6 like pieces, and I have a small air fryer, like as Nabeel mentioned, you need that small chamber at the end of the day to create that thing. It does still take you a very long time to make it for 3 or 4 people, right? So for me,
mhm.
I like to make it for like the entire week. I'll just make it so that I can use it for different things, but that's still going to take me maybe an hour or two because now I can't put it all in the oven.
You
I
have to
have to
use
put
several batches.
I have to do several batches, and I have to turn the meat around after 15 minutes. So to be
But
honest,
then,
yeah.
if you're doing it at a larger scale, then I think you're losing the benefits of the air fryer, which is meant to be on a smaller scale. So you might as well then use a normal oven that's on your stove unit, right?
Yes, but I've done that. I've actually used the oven with the same marinade and it doesn't have the same effect. So maybe, there are air fryers that are just slightly bigger, but again, then that's going to take up space on your kitchen counter. So for me, as an immigrant and Pakistani person who is making dishes from home in the scale that I need them, or just to save time, so I don't have to keep cooking the same thing in the same air fryer. I don't know. I found that it's good once in a while, but it's not something I'm going to use all the time.
So, have you guys used the pressure cooker, the automated smart pressure cookers? There's a couple of them in the market. I don't want to call brands out like that. There was one that was really popular a couple of years ago. Basically, was the number one selling item on Black Friday, I believe. Uh, have you had any experiences with those?
Yes, I use the Instant Pot quite. I mean, again, it's something I use once in a while.
Hmm.
And I have the opposite challenge with Instant Pot. I actually bought the big one.
Hmm.
And the problem with that is it makes, once you figure out how to use it, it's great. You can make big batches of food. But again, cleaning it as an extra stovetop that's separate in that dish is a bit of a challenge for me because it's huge and then you have to make sure you're keeping it very clean so that you can use it again. Um, and I have the opposite challenge, and I think the biggest thing for at least, and I don't mean to speak for all the Pakistani women out there, but for me the biggest challenge is I want to make things fast and in a large batch that lasts the entire week so I can do my other stuff and I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about making things. So for me, um, it's a bit of a challenge using those in bigger batches because you have to, at the end of the day, clean everything.
Yeah, so it sounds like finding the right size for the type of cooking that you're doing seems to be an important attribute.
Yes,
Yeah,
for
I would
me,
say
yes.
so. Yeah, I've never actually tried these recent instant pots. I used to have a crock pot back in the day. I used to be a huge Roger Ebert fan, rest in peace. Obviously, he passed away a few years ago. He was this, famous movie critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he wrote this like, leaving that aside for a sec, how I used to follow his reviews, but he like wrote this article about using the crock pot, and I was really influenced by that. So I went and bought a crock pot for myself, and I tried to make some stews and stuff with it. I was never very successful, but I did have it at one point.
You
Okay.
know, the thing is, we've walked from the air fryer to the crock pot, and in between we've covered the Instapot. But if you're an Asian immigrant, probably your um, cooking utensils of choice is, and Uncle Roger would second that, is basically the rice maker. A
The
rice
rice
cooker,
cooker, yeah.
yeah. That is probably, I think, one of the most used and common items among immigrant families here in Canada, in terms of particularly when we talk about East Asian immigrants.
And South Asian for sure.
And South,
Yeah.
I find it interesting that yes and no, because between when I look at my Pakistani friends, almost none of them have a rice cooker. They will still make rice the old-fashioned way in a on the stovetop.
Ah, interesting. So
So
in
do
in our
either of you?
household,
Yeah, sorry. You go ahead.
no, I was just saying that that's interesting because in our household we've always had an electric rice cooker.
And what
Ah,
about you,
okay.
Mahwish?
No, I don't have a rice cooker. My brother has one. But it's also because, and this is something we're going to talk about in our next podcast, is just I find rice, especially here, is very heavy. And especially with our Pakistani genes, you want to avoid getting any problems in the future. So I try to have less rice. So for that reason, I actually don't have a rice cooker for that reason. And I think that's part of the challenge here. You have to be so careful with the food you eat, which is again something we're going to talk about next. But yeah.
So on rice specifically, when you look at rice from the subcontinent, we look at rice, we wash it, and we try to remove the starch. And so we have non-sticky rice. Basmati rice, well-cooked basmati rice, you should be able to see each strand when it's there. But when you look at East Asian way of cooking rice, is usually sticky rice. So it should clump together.
Yes.
And that's because they want to keep the starchiness inside. So there are two different ways and two different thought processes of how to cook rice, and the species of rice or the type of rice that's best suited for it. And to me, part of the reason I don't have a rice cooker is because of this particular reason, that I like my rice to be way drier than what the rice cooker will make.
Okay. Okay.
Less starchy than what it
But
will
you
make.
like the convenience of the air fryer though.
I like the convenience of the air fryer, and I like the convenience of an air cooker too. It just doesn't come out the way I want it.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay.
uh,
So sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
well, I misspoke. I said air cooker. I wanted to say rice
Okay.
cooker.
We can cut that out. I
We'll edit
have,
that in post. Actually, we'll
yes.
edit down the whole conversation. We will publish a 1 minute episode.
Yes, exactly. Well, I wanted to just wrap up this conversation with, I think we all have different opinions of why we like to and not like using these different gadgets. But is there any hacks that you've gained by using the air fryer Instant Pot, that you want to share with our listeners, and any recipes that you would recommend?
I think the biggest hack is
For
probably
me,
Nabeel's parchment, right?
yeah, the parchment hack is basically that, and this, if you read carefully the manual in there, it actually says this. You can anything that you use in a your standard oven, you can use in an air fryer. So, the little pie making bowls that you have, if you can use them on in a mic in an oven, you can use them in an air fryer, and I've done this. Similar with parchment paper. However, you do have to be careful that because it's a smaller space, if there's anything that's like parchment paper that will curl up, if it does curl up, it'll go and hit the elements and it can catch fire. So you have to make sure that they are settled at the bottom by making sure there's some piece of what you're cooking that's placed on top of it. But I use the parchment paper, which means that essentially, and I don't add any oil into my air fryer, which essentially means that there's very little actual cleaning to be done. I just rinse it once and it's clean,
Yes.
because all the food elements were always on the parchment paper, and
Yes.
that keeps that's my little hack
Yeah,
for
but you said, sorry, you put the grate on top of the parchment paper so that it
No,
isn't.
no, no. I make sure that the food is covering the parchment paper so that when it heats up, it can't curl in up like this. And when you actually read the manual of the air fryers, they say that you have to make sure that there's food on all parts, on all corners of the parchment paper. Otherwise, it's going to curl up into the air fryer,
Got it,
into
got
the
it. I
filament.
think well, maybe it wasn't you then, but one of the hacks that I saw online was you take the grate that comes with the air fryer and you put the parchment paper first, then the grate on top, then the food. So the parchment paper is more it's more how do you say, spread out at the bottom,
Mhm.
so it doesn't tend to curl up when you actually start the air fryer.
That's another way of doing it. Mine is just I make sure the food is well distributed. That's it.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
well distributed there and then in my stomach later on.
yes. Got it. Yawer, what about you? Any hacks?
No, I'm like a little baby compared to you guys. Like just throw stuff in there and eat whatever comes out, and hopefully, I hope my stomach can keep it down.
Yes, I think
I
if there's less oil compared to the food that we normally eat in Pakistan, I think we're off to a good start.
I do think that Yawer, you gave me a little tip that was very interesting, and that was to do with the Nando peri peri flavor.
Yeah, the peri peri flavor is really good. I like it. I like it for marinade.
Yeah, yeah. Just go buy that and use that as a marinade, right?
I
It's
don't know what
Yes.
you guys do, but like I tend to use a little bit less salt on my stuff, and you tend to use a lot of black pepper. And I did one more thing. I bought a melange of different colored peppers, black, red, green, all mixed together in a single thing, and I'm going to try using that. I'm going to put that in my pepper grinder, and I'm going to use that next. Although I have to say that the melange, the bottle that I bought was surprisingly expensive. Peppers are, we can like probably get into this as a completely different topic, but like peppers are like used to be considered as more valuable than gold back in the day, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So this brings us to an interesting topic about food in Canada. So I just wanted to segue to our next podcast, which we can start discussing right now. I find that, we've been talking about air fryers and instant pots, but also the food that we consume is actually leading, even in Canada, to a lot of people um, having problems in, type 2 diabetes and stuff when they grow older. So there is a bit of a sugar epidemic, as you mentioned, Yawer, in going around the world, you could say. So I just wanted to get you guys' take on what you feel that is going on right now in communities in Canada. Yeah.
So we will end this podcast on this note. So thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.